Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. Bradley's mother, Narcus Golan, has passed away 3 months ago. He is autistic and needs structured routine therapies. He receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to Italian social services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system where he can't speak Italian or understand the Italian language. He will be then taken away from the only family he has ever known. Please call Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390. That's 518-474-8390. And please voice your concerns to hashtag Keep Bradley Safe and here in the United States. I welcome back Joan Kloth-Zanard. I had her on season 4, episode 2 back in January. And today, we had talked then about fixing the division to stop the corruption and greed that is being bred in the family courtroom. But today we're going to talk about collusion and the ADA advocates that are now blossoming in the courtrooms that we need. So I welcome you, Joan. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Hey, I want to weigh into what you just said about Bradley. Bradley, you said his name was?
Yes.
Because he's autistic, because he does not speak Italian, he would fail in Italy.
Mhm.
In fact, his autism will become exasperated.
Mhm.
Just on those grounds alone, it would be discrimination against the disabled to force this child to have to move to Italy, not even being with a family member, but with a foster family. This is unacceptable. This is abuse of the disabled.
Mhm.
The Italian courts need to be held accountable for that, especially because it would cause irreparable damage to a child who at this tender age is just learning to understand the world in an autistic manner, and that delays his emotional mental development, which means everything will become exasperated
Mhm.
because he doesn't have the ability to transition. Autistic people do not have the ability to transition this easily. It is very difficult because they have to have a stable set routine. This
Mhm.
child has had 6 years of a stable set routine in the United States with the appropriate care with a family member. To now take this kid and send him to Italy where he speaks no Italian, knows nobody, and can't even live with his paternal family because of his father's behavior and violence. They want to just put him in foster care so father can see him.
Mhm.
No, sorry. This
Mhm.
father apparently is wealthy enough that he can come to the United States and he can do therapeutic supervised visitation.
I
Same thing
agree.
he's doing in Italy, but here the child will be getting his mental, emotional needs met. He will not be traumatized by being moved somewhere where he knows nobody, to a family he knows nobody, where he can't even understand what they're saying to him.
Mhm.
This is not acceptable.
No.
Under the ADA, it is a crime.
Mhm. Oh, I agree. I just can't imagine the stress this family has been through.
I mean, I suspect the child probably either has a dual citizenship, but
Mhm.
because this child has lived in the United States for 6 years, his home of residency is here. The Italian courts or Child Protective Services clearly have an underlying agenda.
Mhm.
Is it like the United States, where our federal Title 4D provides $10,000 to $15,000 a year to our Child Protective Services for every child they place into foster or adoptive care?
Mhm.
It may well be, and that may be why the Italian government wants this kid, because they know they're going to get more money placing an autistic child in foster care. That is abuse of the disabled and lacks child welfare protection. In fact, it's child welfare endangerment
Mhm. Mhm.
to do this with this child. This child's already lost his mother.
Mhm.
He's been abused by his father. The mother was abused by the father. There is solid documented evidence. It is why the father, who's in Italy, is not even allowed to have custody of the kid. So why would you put him where he has no protection, where he doesn't know anybody, where he can't speak the language? The only reason, there's a monetary advantage. Either father gave money to the Child Protective Services, or Child Protective Services is getting funding from the federal government. Otherwise, why would you do this? If you were a compassionate, empathetic person, you would never pull a child who's just lost their mother from the only family he knows, unless, of course, you're narcissistic, bipolar, borderline, and just antisocial person altogether.
How sad. How
It is
sad.
sad.
Our prayers are with this
This
child.
father, but you have to remember, this father doesn't even care.
No.
This father in open court admitted he beat the mother, and that he would do it again. Why would you put a traumatized child back in that situation where they know nobody? I mean, that's just abuse of the disabled, discrimination. They think they can get away with it, and because the father is clearly narcissistic. Only a narcissist that's that narcissistic would think it's okay to beat somebody up and announce it to the world that they did it because they think it's okay.
Yeah, right. And why would you even announce that in court? I mean,
I'm amazed his attorney didn't shut him down and tell him to strike it from the record.
I don't know. Sometimes you get these certain I better not say what I want to say.
Clearly, the courts found him guilty, but then why is Child Protective Services even involved? If Child Protective Services is really about protecting this autistic child, they would have never asked for this child to be returned to a country he doesn't even know anybody in. They would have said, no, he needs to stay where he is with the mother, with her aunt. If the father wants to see the child, let him take the trip to the United States. Let him pay for the therapeutic supervised visitation. He's already been convicted. Why would the only reason, like I said, is a monetary one. Somebody is paying somebody off. It's the only way. Or we have a problem in Italy with their Child Protective Services and foster care services clearly are not properly trained. Especially, it sounds like, with autistic and handicapped, they have no comprehension of the mental differences and issues involved with an autistic or Asperger's child. Change is often very, very difficult for them because they're very hyper-focused on things.
Right. Oh, yeah, most definitely. He's had routine for 6 days a week. Is he going to get that care over there? I don't think so.
And even if he was going to get that care over there, the problem is it's all Italian. It's people he doesn't know. He's got 6 years with people he knows, who he really is comfortable with, who he's made great strides. And this is important. For Italy's foster care system to do this to this child, I would say there's a nice big lawsuit that could be filed against them for child welfare endangerment, and that of a handicapped child, and discrimination against that child and his family, or his family. It's sad. Unfortunately, we just don't have enough people trained in the ADA. As you and I were previously discussing before we started today, we come across this all the time with people who just, because somebody's is blind, people don't know how to respond to that. So they're yelling at them. No, I'm not deaf, I'm blind.
Right.
You have the people who are deaf, and the person's screaming on the top of their voice, and the person's looking at them going, honey, I'm deaf. I can't hear you.
Yeah.
But I can tell you're yelling by your facial expressions. So, I think this is something that really needs to be also in the schools. I don't know if they still do this, but I know when my daughter went, there was a little bit more of a collaboration with the kids that didn't have these learning disabilities or physical disabilities and those that did, so that we could teach our kids compassion and empathy, because we are losing this emotional, mental, and development and peace in our lives. Hence why we see so many narcissists. And the problem is they're growing exponentially because we're not treating this disease or this mental illness.
I also think just going through the family court system creates a personality disorders. I saw that written somewhere.
Not that it creates a personality disorder. It creates a situational condition that is temporary. When the trigger is removed, for example, all the court battles, the hostile aggressive parenting styles, when those are removed, the situation dies down because the triggers aren't there anymore. It's almost the same as having somebody who was physically and sexually abused by their spouse, and then that spouse and for years they're living with this trauma, they're got severe PTSD, stress and anxiety, and then that abuser dies. Well, that trigger is gone. And it's almost like they don't have to look over their shoulder anymore.
Right.
That's why it's called situational condition. It's not permanent. When the trigger is removed, the condition subsides or goes away altogether.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes. And the thing is, we need more ADA advocates.
There are programs out there. You can get free training. Just so people understand, there is no licensure or let me rephrase that. The government, whether federal or state, does not demand licensure or certification to be an ADA advocate. In fact, my cat could be an ADA advocate. My dog. But there are training programs that I would strongly recommend all people do, and then get extra training if you're working in the courts on Title II of the ADA, because that is the biggest area we're lax in. So Title I is employment. Title II, state and federal. Title III is private public businesses. Title IV is aircraft. Aircraft, there's Title V, 6, and 7, which are aircraft, travel, and one was miscellaneous. And they all are hinged on or developed from the original ADA laws of the 1960s, I believe 67 or 68. And of course, they've grown. Now we have, instead of being the ADA or American Disability Act, it is now the ADAAA, American Disability Act Amended Act of 2016 and 2018. Now, one of the places they can get training, I would strongly suggest try doing online training first, is ADATA, ADATA.org. You can go under resources, then to online or education, and look for online and try and take, I don't know if the program's still out there the way I did it, but there were like 7 or 8 courses I took, and they have a test after each one. But I said, and that one's free because they want more and more people to be educated in the ADA. So, and join and get their newsletter, because their newsletter will also teach you things and tell you what's going on in other states. One of the biggest issues here in Connecticut is I'm the only probably certified license or ADA advocate. Okay. There are other people who do advocacy, but they don't really have any actual training. They just know the laws from reading it. They didn't do any trainings. But if you call to get ADA assistance, the ACLU won't help you. The ADA, the disability rights doesn't help. Nobody helps you with ADA in this state. The only ADA attorneys we have are for Title I employment and Title III education. Not Title III education, which also comes under Title II because it's also state and federal. But it's only for employment and education. There's no ADA attorneys for anything else. Very difficult.
Yes. I know I even have parents calling me asking if I know any civil suit attorneys. It's like, I don't know. I don't know anyone down here, and I couldn't get anyone to take my case. So, you know, I don't know
It's
what to tell
very,
people.
very hard
Yes.
because all they want is money. Most of us don't have that kind of money. And because we don't have the money, these people are, and that's why our world is such a mess. Because these people are getting away with it because we have no way to hold them accountable so
Mhm.
that this type of behavior stops.
Right.
Which means we need to have stronger legislation to enable us to have better ADA accommodations, or not necessarily accommodations, but better ADA resources and support. There needs to be better funding because as we get older, we're more likely to quantify under the ADA because
Mhm.
of physical issues.
Oh, definitely, because as
Add
you
in,
go ahead.
add in the stresses of modern society, and especially if you're dealing with the family courts and you have mental health conditions that are exasperated that quantify as ADA,
Or
PTSD, stress and
e
anxiety.
even when the opposing attorney calls you mentally unstable, boom, there it's all now you're suddenly mentally unstable where you never were.
Okay, so here's the quantifier. The definition to get ADA accommodations in the courts are: one, you get SSI or SSDI, or you were disabled but are not disabled now. So for example, you had cancer and now you're in remission, you still quantify. Or three, you have the appearance of being disabled. You don't have to have all three. You could only have one of them. So when somebody claims you're mentally unstable, they have just opened the door for ADA accommodations, whether those accommodations are, whether you're mentally ill or not. The fact that they've stated that you are mentally ill means that they're assuming you to be disabled,
Mhm.
even if you are not mentally ill. So now you can't take my kids away from me because I'm entitled to equal and the same access to all the same resources and support and information that somebody who isn't mentally ill and is a regular parent would be getting.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, we were talking earlier, and you could sue, say an attorney calls you mentally unstable or makes fun of your disability.
Yeah, you could
That
go after them. Absolutely. Would you win on it? You would have to have it recorded or witnesses, or in writing.
Mhm.
Um, and you might find it better to go for a grievance against them
Mhm.
first to prove that there's a viable case. Not that a grievance means anything, because most of these grievance panels, especially when it comes to attorneys, are a joke. It's a protection of the attorney.
Mhm.
Unlike in the mental health or medical field, where they say to you, you are going to trial on this and you're going to lose your license. As an attorney, they give you the two options: retire early or go to trial and risk losing your license. No other profession gives you a way out. And I'm
Mhm.
sorry, that's not okay. That has to stop with the grievances. No, they cannot just decide that they're going to retire early so they can get out of trouble. They've done the harm, they've done the damages. They shouldn't be rewarded for it by being allowed to retire early so that they can keep their license and go out there and now still work doing interviews, lectures, whatever. No,
Ugh,
I'm sorry. That's one legislation that needs to be fixed.
yes, I agree with that. You know, a lot of people never knew this existed. I'd gone through the whole, family court fiasco, and I wish I would have known this existed. I never
We
knew.
didn't know it back then either. And
Mhm.
not that it would have made that much difference in my husband's case, because the Judge Miller, who's not with us anymore, said to
Well,
my
yeah.
husband's ex, lady, I'm not a psychiatrist and I'm not a psychologist, but you need one.
Uh-huh.
Well, she got caught lying to the judge. She first she refused to use our dental insurance that we had, and she called it junk dental insurance, and the judge looked at her and said, it would have taken 33% off the bill. I'm not making your husband pay for these dental charges. You refuse to use so we won on that. But of course, she goes back and tells the kids that dad doesn't have to pay, got out of it. And then she tried to submit a day camp bill for $3,600 to the YMCA. And we knew that she didn't pay that. One, because she was on Medicaid. So we knew she got financial aid, and we knew that she probably only paid $300 per child, 2 children, $600. So the bill was for $3,600. What do you think she did? She put a 3 in front of the 6 and handed us the bill. So my husband's attorney and us called the YMCA, who said, oh, no, she got financial aid. It was only $600.
Oh.
So we got the actual bill. This is why the court called her, said this to her. We've got her up on the witness stand, and my attorney says, shows her the bill she submitted to us. And he says, are you sure this is the bill? She goes, yes, absolutely. He goes, would it surprise you to know that here I'm holding the exact bill from the YMCA? It's only $600.
Mm-hmm.
So she got caught lying in court. And that's why the judge was so furious with her.
But he didn't do anything to her. There was no accountability for
Well, because back then they were afraid if they didn't believe in any other punishment for her than financial. And they felt that they financially penalized her, that it was going to harm the children. They didn't understand the psychological damages yet. It was too long ago. We're talking late 1990s, 98, 99. So they didn't understand anything about this yet. It's just pretty much almost just hitting the internet waves. So what the judge did is he said we weren't responsible for any of those bills. That's how he financially damaged her, and said, no, your husband will not pay for he's not going to pay for the dental, because he would have had 33% off if you had done this right. And he's not paying for the camp bill because you lied. And you got financial aid. So she was pissed that we didn't pay, but the judge, that was the only way he could penalize her. Well, then we have things turned in the reverse, where we have parents forced to pay everything while the other parent sits back collecting alimony, child support, and income from a job. No. What? No. But this is where the collusion comes in, because first of all, nobody working in the family court should be there unless they have at minimum of a BS in psychology and child psychology, for that matter. You do not belong on that bench if you don't have that. You don't belong as an attorney in the family courts or guardian ad litem, because you cannot possibly have the children's best interests and their welfare if you don't understand the psychological traumas. That's number one. Number two, like we said earlier, thou who has the money wins. So it's not about the children. It's about who's got the money to pay off the guardian ad litem, the therapist, the judge, who's making what donation to whose favorite charity. We have a lot of proof here of payments being made to people's properties. Somebody takes out a second mortgage on their house, and then what they do is they have the person pay off the second mortgage, and that's how they get paid, because then that money they got up for the second mortgage is the same as the payment they would have gotten, only it got washed.
Interesting.
So we've got quite a few people who have researched this, and we found quite a few attorneys here in Connecticut who have done this. It's sick. You also have price fixing, and this is part of the collusion. So we have attorney here, Debbie Grover. Nobody's going to tell you this, and of course the grievance panel let her get away with it, so it's not public, but the person who filed it against, the people that filed it against her, knew. What price fixing is when the attorneys get together and the professionals, and they decide how much money they want to make on the case before they let it settle. She got caught, along with probably several other attorneys. And they said to her, you can either face the music in court or retire early. What do you think she did?
Retired early.
You got it. Yeah. So her practice still exists. Her children work under her, and she doesn't go into court anymore. She just works without being in the courts. She's still an attorney, but retired. and teaching, if you will. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
It's not okay.
And she's teaching people to be attorneys.
And
Wow.
and she's teaching them. She is, what do we want? This is sad because she's teaching them inappropriate values and morals. And this is why we have a problem with our family courts, because it's just breeding it.
Mhm. Oh, definitely is. I've seen it with
And
my own.
I really believe that if you took the family attorneys out of the family courts, anything that was financial can go into regular civil court. Discuss all your financials in the civil court. Family court is abolished, other than for a few minor things. Everything must go through family relations mediation with professionals who are trained in child psychology and mediation. Yes, I understand it is absolutely impossible to mediate with a narcissist, but guess what? It can be done. And it's a lot better to do that, or at least be able to show the judge, look, we tried to mediate, and the mediator says, Mom has offered up 1,001 options. Dad refuses to even offer up one. That says boodles and oodles to a judge. Who's the parent that's going to be willing to work things out? Which parent is going to make all the unilateral decisions? You don't need to know what was discussed, just that who was willing to discuss and who wasn't.
Oh, okay, so co-parenting with a personality disorder of whatever, when your attorney says, "Oh, yeah, the co-parent counselor told me your ex was volatile." So you would think she would take that and present that to the judge, but that doesn't happen in family court.
Well, technically, it could. The problem is mediation says what goes on in mediation cannot be brought up in court unless you've come to a solution and that's what you're bringing to the court.
Mm-hmm.
This is a problem. Yes, I agree. What's going on in mediation probably shouldn't be brought in, but the behavior patterns are what is important, because that's going to tell you which parent is willing to co-parent and share parenting and go back and forth and work on things, and which parent is going to be the controller, unilaterally making every decision and cutting the other parent out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important,
Mm-hmm.
because that is why they all should have psychology as a BS at minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So they can recognize this. They're not trained to recognize this pattern or this issue and how harmful it is and how that makes it difficult. Even where there's abuse. Look, I've got parents who clearly were abused by the other parent, but they understand that parent does have some positive other things. Like they might be really good in math, or they might be a really good carpenter, or they might be a really good writer. And so those pieces are important for the child to be able to get from that parent.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, if the person is so volatile, then you do therapeutic supervised visitation, but the parent still has the ability to maybe do the English homework with the kid or the math homework with the kid. The kid learns respect for that parent for that skill. Mm-hmm. There's still some positive that this kid can feel about themselves having to do with the other parent. Mm-hmm. So, if it's and look, having therapeutic supervised means the therapist is there, they're watching what's going on. If there's a problem, they can stop it immediately. Mm-hmm. They're also there to help that parent learn how to properly communicate with the child and to change their communication styles. I have a theory about how to treat narcissism and bipolar men. These people do not do well with change and big changes. They need very small, minute changes, because it has to be so small that it's easy for them to implement it to a point where they don't even realize they're implementing. At one point, all of a sudden, they're here with this change. And now the parent looks back and goes, wow, a year, 2 years, a year ago, I wouldn't have not responded this way. I would have responded like this. And now they're seeing this change. They've learned a new skill. They apply it to other skills. They're getting an epiphany. They're learning a little more compassion and empathy. There is, I believe, a way to help narcissists and whatnot and antisocial personalities to gradually gain the stages and skills that they missed in their development as a child.
Mhm.
I always tell parents that when they're dealing with a child who's been abused, they've often missed stages of development.
Mhm.
So you need to go back and make sure that you hit every one of those stages of development, because those missed stages affect that child as an adult because they haven't got that skill. For example, somebody who completely misses age 2 and sharing, and age 3 where it bleeds into age 3, they can't share. They will be predispositioned to be narcissistic and needing total control because they miss the stage of sharing. They don't understand that wonderful feeling when you share and you give, because that stage, for whatever reason, was missed.
Mhm.
And that is very important for us to go back on and to make sure that we process this. Even as an adult, you can go back. You can have your therapist slowly bring you back through all the stages of development as a child to make sure that you hit every one of them. And where you're having a problem, the therapist says, okay, this is an area we do need to stop in. Maybe we need to work on sharing a little more, and the feeling that comes from sharing and giving back.
Mhm. No, I agree. There's a total seems to be a disconnect from what I'm seeing now from when I was growing up, when there was,
Right.
the please, thank you, more
Oh, yeah.
kindness.
Oh,
Now
right.
it's just brutal out there.
Yeah, and we're not talking about opening doors, okay? That anybody can do.
Right.
I open the door for men, men open the door for me. I'm not talking about opening doors. We're talking just general niceties,
Right.
general compassion, general empathy, being able to literally take off your shoe,
Mhm.
put on their shoe, and go, oh, now I understand. Okay, so if I'm understanding now, let me take their shoes off, put my shoes back on. How can I incorporate the two, and so that we can fix this problem they're dealing with?
Right. Yeah, there's like no compassion, and and this is why you do need, or some people do need, an ADA advocate in the courtroom, because there's no compassion. That opposing attorney is out to get whatever for.
In fact, you can motion the courts to allow your ADA advocate to 1 second, my computer, I don't want it to restart. To brain fart. Oy. Oh, you can actually write up a motion asking that your ADA advocate be allowed to speak for you, to present and help you present your case. I had to do that with one of my cases, and my attorney never even talked. I had my ADA advocate. Well, my attorney's a piece of shit. Anyways, I had my ADA advocate talked and spoke up about the atrocities from my attorney.
Mhm.
Because my attorney is so bad. Oh my God.
That's a shame.
He violated my ADA rights, my constitutional rights. Forget it. The damages from him are just astronomical.
Mhm.
And yes, I will be suing him. I already filed a grievance, a
Good.
big grievance against him. But we all know where that's going to lead. He'll probably get off or be told retire early, because there's so many things. He tried to force me under duress to take a plea.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
And in front of my ADA and my husband, he lied, claiming that there were some people hit in a car accident, that these people wanted me incarcerated to the fullest. We get into the courtroom, and the judge says, that the people that were injured don't want me incarcerated. That's because I think the people that were injured knew that the accident was their fault.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And so right there, this is so illegal to try and force me under duress to take a plea for a crime I didn't commit.
That's scary. Some people have no idea this goes on in these
Yeah,
courtrooms.
no.
No.
I mean, even the judge has violated my ADA rights.
Mhm.
He has been told over and over on the record that my attorney is ineffective. The relationship is irrevocably broken, that he has lost evidence, that he has failed to do his job, that he's repeatedly overcharged me. There's 4 affidavits, 2 from my ADA advocate and 2 from me about my attorney's bad behavior. And the judge puts in the notes that I'm not allowed, judge would not approve me to self-represent. I fired my attorney 3 times. He tried to withdraw. Judge refused it, said that my attorney cannot be removed unless I find another attorney to replace him. So this is a violation of my constitutional rights to self-represent, a violation of my ADA rights, because he's assuming because I have ADA accommodations that therefore I can't possibly represent myself. No psych eval, no evaluations, never talked to my therapist, doesn't know, and has been told by this is a violation of my ADA rights, my constitutional rights. So this is huge. But finding an attorney who will submit a motion for dismissal is next to godliness, because everybody looks at the case and the case is in such deplorable shape for my attorney that they don't. And my attorney, every time we find somebody will take the case, they call my attorney and my attorney badmouths me. And we know this because one of the attorneys reported it back to us. He's deliberately blocking me from getting an attorney. That's also illegal. It's defamation and slander. But it happens all the bloody time. And it's not okay. They trampled over my ADA rights. He refused. I had to actually pay close to $4,000 to train him in the ADA, and he still didn't get it. I'm pretty sure he was paid off anyways. The minute he was put on for his appearance, he put his appearance in, all of a sudden he changed. His whole attitude changed. Everything. This case could have been thrown out in 2020 because I had massive amounts of medical evidence to show ADA violations in this case. And he admits to me that he gets all my medical information in June of 2020. Since then, 9 times he's asked me to send him my medical info, and he keeps charging me for this. You admitted you got it.
Yeah.
When we asked him for a copy of my file, there was nothing in there but 4 pleadings. That was it. Nothing in my file. Where's my file? Yeah. Where's all the evidence I sent you? Where's all your communications with everybody? Where's my file?
Right. So
but because I know my rights and I understand the ADA and I understand a little bit more from having done this work, I can see where there's a problem. I had enough medical evidence to refute every single charge and then some. He refused to present it to the DA. Because then the DA would have known he had no case and that he was wasting the taxpayers' money. This is just a witch hunt. And we know it. Okay. And that's one of the other problems. These people go after you. They think they can take you down because you're disabled or because you have PTSD, stress, and anxiety from the triggers. And they can, because a lot of parents and people just don't have the emotional strength to keep fighting anymore. And they just say, fuck it, I give up. That's why we see so many suicides. They're done fighting. They have no life left because of these people. So these people have such lack of empathy and compassion that they're causing suicides in others. No, that's not okay.
And it just has not ended. This is the thing is, I don't know when family court is going to be abolished, but I
It's
think,
not, yeah, go ahead. I'm
oh,
sorry.
you go ahead.
No, no, no. Your time.
Well, it's like, but at least there is an alternative with an ADA advocate that can step in and help
Yep,
and
exactly.
maybe light a fire under the attorney's ass. I mean,
Also, it puts oversight and levels the playing field, because the Constitution says that we will not discriminate against anybody for race, color, creed, kind, or handicap.
mhm,
So they attempt to claim that you're not a fit parent. Well, then prove that I'm not a fit parent. Prove we have hundreds of thousands of parents who have bipolar, manic depressive, PTSD, that aren't losing their children, that are in intact families. So if it's okay to be bipolar, manic depressive in an intact family, why isn't it okay in a divorcing family?
right.
Get the proper resources and support in. The intact families getting the proper resources and support. Why not the divorced family? If it's okay in an intact family, why is it not okay in a divorced? And let's be real. When you're dealing with an alienator or aggressive alienating parent, they are mentally ill. They have a mental health condition that hasn't been treated. As we know, they are afraid of not being perfect, so they can't go to therapy. So you can't take them to therapy. What you do is you have to have specialized therapeutic training classes or some kind of course that helps them very slowly start to make those changes, so they start to gain some empathy and compassion, and so that their mindset begins to change, and they will end up being a much happier person in life too.
Mhm.
It's a
Yeah.
big
Yeah. And then, as an ADA advocate, from what you've seen, some people call, as we talked before, parental alienation junk science. What do you do when the other side is calling the person that you're helping an alienator when they're not? It's really the
I,
other side.
right, it's really the other side, and that is why it is so imperative to get proper training, because anybody can accuse anybody of anything. So this crap about how there's all these false allegations of alienation, there are very few false allegations of alienation. Most people who are accusing it have gone and gotten an expert to weigh in on it. Just like somebody can claim temporary insanity for a murder, an alienator can claim that they're the ones being alienated.
Mhm.
Just to point the finger in the other direction and away from them. Well, in that case, then let's get the experts in who have been doing appropriate training and studies and research to see whether there really is alienation going on against that parent or not.
Mhm.
Or is it something so mild, it's just the two parents disagreeing on something and they just need to figure out how to mediate better.
Mhm.
And here's the other one. The parents who claim, oh, the other parent's abusive, but they can't prove it. Okay. It keeps getting thrown out. Okay. Stop harping on that, because it makes you look really bad. The more you file allegations of abuse, the more you look like the problem. Instead, recognize that
Mhm.
now your job is to teach your children critical thinking skills to ensure their executive functioning skills are in place. And now the kids are going to have two role models. They're with both parents 50-50. You have a 50% chance and ability to teach your children compassion, empathy, what abuse looks like, what it doesn't look like, and to assist them with critical thinking skills. You have a 50% chance. Let your children, if they have the right executive functioning skills, will be able to look at the two and figure out what part of if the parent is truly abusive, what part of that abusive parent is important to them. Maybe the importance is knowing that they are their father or their mother, or knowing that that parent is the one who helps them with their math homework or whatever. Okay. if you keep filing false allegations and you keep getting rejected on them, you're going to have to turn this around by being the parent who's providing 50% of the positive role model values and morals.
Mhm.
Your children will hopefully have the executive functioning and critical thinking skills to be able to recognize which side's really a better way to live their life.
Mhm.
And that's the best you're going to be able to offer them unless there's actual physical hard evidence. Because otherwise, all you're doing is giving the other person more power and control every time you report them and they win and it doesn't happen. You're giving them more power and control. They're saying, look, here's another time you reported me.
Mhm.
And then for those cases where the person is falsely reporting abuse and neglect, now, if they're constantly falsely submitting this, it's actually intentional infliction of emotional stress, negligent infliction of emotional stress, defamation, slander, perjury, filing of false allegations, malicious prosecution, vexatious litigation, and custodial interference, etc. And this is where you need something called a Strobel order put into place, which is what they call it in Connecticut and some of the other states. Basically, it's an order that says that neither party or one party is no longer allowed to file any more motions or complaints without express permission from the courts because they filed too many. And you don't want to be in that position where you filed so many that now you're being charged. Because every time a report goes in and it comes back denied or unable to substantiate, it's another notch to proving that maybe your allegations are not true and they're false because you haven't provided. And then there are the cases where they provided solid, hard evidence of abuse and neglect, like what's it, Bradley?
Yes.
Bradley's case, and it's the money driving the case. The father is mega wealthy, and he probably made a donation to that judge in Italy and to the foster system. And I suspect that he chose the foster parents too, knowing that those foster parents will let him have the kid whenever he wants them, and there'll be no supervision. So, this is why it is so imperative to have appropriate training at every professional level when it comes to the family courts. We cannot be shy of this. It needs to be full blown. In fact, we're looking at educational legislation to ensure that this is done. We're, for all these people who oppose and claim parental alienation isn't real, their biggest problem is they have no statistical data to back it. What they have is statistical data that's not statistical data. It can't even be replicated. Joan Myers and Jean Mercer can't even replicate their information and their research. Whereas we have over 35 years of solid, standalone research and studies that parental alienation is real. And the courts know, the legislators know parental alienation is real. It doesn't matter what you call it. They know psychological abuse is real and it is happening.
And they're associating it with Richard Gardner.
Well, there's nothing wrong with associating it with Richard Gardner. Richard Gardner, all he did was coin a term. Parental alienation has been going on for 100 years. Albert Einstein was alienated. If people want, they can go out to Lawrence DeMarco's YouTube page, The Law Center. There is a ton of stuff out there, but one of them is something about parental alienation is going on for centuries or something like that. And it lists cases, both mothers and fathers, where they were alienated way back 100 years ago. So this isn't anything new. Gardner, all he did was put a name to it. There's a group of women who opposed it, because he testified against these women that they were actually alienating. Now, apparently, I had a big run-in with them about 25 years ago with this group. My original email is Putzangel, Putzangel. Well, I came up with it because my husband calls me a putz because I piddle around all the time. And Angel come from my daughter's middle name. Okay. Well, apparently, putz in Hebrew means the foreskin of the penis. So I have a lot of words for them. These
Right.
women started attacking me, calling me a penis lover. So I
Oh,
wrote back, well, I would sure hope so since I'm heterosexual.
yeah.
This is how insane and nonsensical their approach and their theory is.
Mhm, mhm.
They, we're not saying that people haven't used it falsely. No less than, in fact, there are maybe 0.001 of false allegations of alienation compared to 90% of abuse allegations being false. And here's the problem for these women who claim that all the abuse allegations are true. If that's the case, we got a serious problem in this world, because that means there's way more abuse cases than we ever thought.
Mhm.
And we better hope that 90% of those cases that are brought to Child Protective Services are false. Because otherwise, we have a serious societal problem with violence and anger and rage.
Mhm. How would an ADA advocate handle if the opposing side shoots out parental alienation, and it catches that person off guard because they're like, "What, me?"
Well, they need to show they have. Okay, so this is what's very important, to have a chronology.
Mhm,
Because once you have a chronology of events, pre the separation, the relationship, you had a loving, healthy relationship, to this destroyed relationship, and now you're claiming that you're the alienator. You really have to have a chronology. You really need to show, they have to be able to show how you've alienated. Did you keep the kids from the other parent? Well, you kept the kids because you decided the other parent was abusive. Well, you can only do that under the permission of Child Protective Services or the courts. You can't decide to withhold them just because you want to withhold them. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work that
mhm,
way,
mhm,
because there's too many false allegations. If we didn't have so many false allegations, this wouldn't be an issue, because there's so many false allegations of abuse. It's gummed up the works. It's become taken away time, money, and resources from true victims. And it's
correct.
selfish of a parent to file false allegations of abuse. That's selfish.
Mhm,
So, as an AD advocate, I'm going to go in and I have to first know both sides. So, how is it this person is alienating? What did they do that you believe is an alienating tactic? They're going to say, well, because he's he's so angry, or the other person, whatever. If there's PTSD, stress and anxiety built into this, I need to know, have you been diagnosed with PTSD, stress, anxiety, bipolar, any of these diagnoses? Do you have visual problems, hearing problems? Do you have degenerated joint disease? What is it that we're working with here? Are they claiming that you're an alienator because you're mentally ill? Well, show me where there's a medical report. And if there isn't, are you willing to do an evaluation? And the evaluator has to be very educated in parental alienation, or they completely miss it.
mhm,
They miss the signs and symptoms because it gets mistaken for bipolar manic depressive instead of being a situational condition.
mhm,
It's the same thing with ADD, ADHD in kids. Oftentimes kids are misdiagnosed with it. It's really PTSD, stress, and anxiety. But because they don't have the ability, the words to express their emotions, they suck it inside. And so it comes out in physical behavior patterns. And they
mhm,
get misdiagnosed as ADD, ADHD. Some of them have ADD, ADHD on a very mild level, but because of the PTSD, stress, and anxiety, it becomes exasperated.
mhm.
And if you can get the triggers out, their ADA becomes more manageable. Many parents have ADD, ADHD, and were never properly diagnosed with it when they were in school and in kids. And they got the diagnosis much later in life. Doesn't mean they're not a good parent. And I would suspect that many of them that do have that may also have PTSD, stress, and anxiety behind the ADD, ADHD.
Mhm,
But because your ADD, ADHD mental health professionals are not trained in parental alienation, they don't recognize the extenuating other pieces that may be exasperating the condition. And that is really important. These people are not properly trained in the ADA. They're not properly trained in parental alienation. They shouldn't be working in the family courts.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are people, these guardian ad litems that like to moonlight as psychologists.
I'm being retaliated against because a client and I went after an attorney guardian ad litem, and she made a medical diagnosis of my client without a medical degree, and we nailed her on the witness stand for it. Between that and various other clients who reported her to the grievance panel for her behavior, she is another one of those that was given the retire early or be charged criminally and lose your license. And now she is on the police commission of a local town. Right. She does not belong holding any political office. She is a sociopath.
Mm-hmm.
Her MO is if there's a couple and they're fighting over custody, then only one parent should have custody. She doesn't believe in shared parenting. Mm-hmm. And so what she does is she goes headstrong after the other parent. She makes sure they lose their job, their businesses, their assets, their home, their children. And if that doesn't work, then she starts trying to find criminal charges to file against them so that they can't have they legally are criminalized away from their children. I can't tell you how many parents have had to fight those charges. I got one who cost him $250,000. He beat the rap, proved his innocence, went into family court. This same guardian ad litem who was on the criminal case convinces the family guardian ad litem to drop off so she can go on the family case. This is a conflict of interest. It's illegal. He still won sole custody of his kid. Before he could get the kid, this guardian ad litem assisted the mother in kidnapping the kid to Costa Rica. And he still hasn't seen his kid because she filed a pedophile charge against him that he had already been found innocent of in the U.S. Costa Rica will not accept the U.S. Laws and case.
What about the Hague? Why didn't the Hague do?
They're refusing to comply with it. Oh. Many countries do not comply with the Hague. It's a big problem. Even though they're Hague, they don't comply. Italy is probably part of the Hague and doesn't comply. Mm-hmm. The fact that Italy would take this poor autistic child and pull him from everything he has known for his entire 7 years of life and put him in a foreign country where he can't speak the language, where he's being put in with a foster family, that's just insanity. Mm-hmm. The kid's a U.S. citizen. His U.S. citizenship has a higher standing than Italy's because he's lived here longer. His mental and educational well-being should override him being put into foster care in Italy. Mm-hmm. And that is where the attorney needs to be fighting for this child's ADA rights, to be with his family here in the United States, where he has a stable environment, where he understands the language, where he's got a team that has been working with him. Not put into foster care when he's got a family he can be with here. He can't be with his father because of the abuse. But he's got a family here where there's no abuse. He's getting what he needs. This poor kid.
Yeah.
He's traumatized from it. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. This is like that kid that came through Florida from Cuba.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
What was it? Elon?
Yeah.
The trauma for that child. Mm-hmm. My hope is that someday this kid is old enough to write about what this ordeal was like for him so that others can understand, so our government can understand. Mm-hmm. No. Do I think that we should let every Tom, Dick, and Harry from every single country into our country? Probably not, because we got a hard enough time with jobs here as it is. I got that. But we also have to be a little more conscious of why are people coming to this country? Either they're coming to this country because they can't survive in their own country. Is it political? What is there's got to be more. And if it's because they can't survive financially there, well, how can we help that family, those families there?
Mhm.
What can we do so that they don't need to come to the United States and that they can survive there? And we create a workforce that maybe from there, don't get me wrong, it annoys the hell out of me when I get on the phone with Amazon or whoever, and I don't get somebody in the United States. I get somebody in Ethiopia or wherever. Okay, that annoys the hell out of me because I can barely understand them.
Mhm.
This is probably why I like Apple products. When you call up on an Apple product, you're not switched to Japan.
Right.
Japan has their own technical support. US has their own technical support. We might use Canada. It might be somebody from Canada, but they speak solid and English. We're
Mhm.
keeping the jobs in the United States.
Mhm.
Tech support for, let's say, Mexico should be in Mexico. There's where you're going to build your jobs. Get your people trained in Mexico to do Apple computer, to do whatever.
Yeah,
Let's, I don't know. I mean, but maybe that's too simplified for our government.
I think it is.
Simple, stupid.
Oh, now, as an ADA advocate, have you ever had a judge say, "No, you can't come in here"? Like, refuse you entrance to even, in the courtroom or help your client?
I have never been refused, but I've heard of clients having their ADA accommodations refused. Here's the deal. A judge cannot make a decision on ADA accommodations. One, if it's their case, it's a conflict of interest because now they know what the person's disabled with.
Mhm.
They're not allowed to know that. That's supposed to be hidden. Two, the only way they can do it is if they're certified as an ADA coordinator and they're deciding on it for another judge. Otherwise, they really should not be doing it because it's a conflict of interest. Because if you're going to tell a client what accommodations a person needs or doesn't need, if you are not certified as an ADA coordinator and trained in the ADA,
Mhm.
and those judges are going to find themselves in a lot of trouble because it's going to come back at them.
No, I guess, some people say, "Well, gee, people don't if the judge wants to refuse, that's the judge can do whatever they want."
Right. But that's where we have a problem. Judges are not God. They think they are. And that's got to stop
Mhm.
because they're not God. Most of them are not properly trained. Most of them do not have ADA training. They have minimal. They have like this little bit of training. They don't understand it all. They don't understand how it affects a person. They don't understand how the PTSD, stress, and anxiety works. So, for example, I have people say to me, no, I don't have PTSD, stress, and anxiety. I said, so when you go to the mailbox to get your mail,
Oh.
do you get triggered and get sick to your stomach because you're afraid you're going to? Yeah, I do. I said, that's PTSD. You just don't know that that's what it's called. Every time the phone rings or somebody knocks at your door, do you freak out and get panicked? That's PTSD.
Oh, I had to call a friend on the phone in order to walk me out to the mailbox to see if there was anything from the court or domestic relations.
Yep, that's PTSD.
Oh my gosh.
The anxiety part is the nausea. And the stress, if you get nauseous, you feel like you're gonna, like you can't focus, you can't speak, you're shaking, you're getting dehydrated, you got to drink a lot of water, your eyes start to get irritated, or you can't, you feel like you're out of your body.
Mhm.
That's can also happen, but that's more on the level of shock almost. So this is another one. Somebody who has PTSD, stress, and anxiety, if they go into shock, let's say because of an accident, their shock is they feel their the pattern of behavior is totally different because their PTSD, stress, and anxiety have exasperated it in a different way.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so wrong what's going on in these courts.
Mhm.
And, you
You
know,
got it.
as far as it being abolished, I don't know when that will ever happen. I
Yep.
don't know, it's just it's a money maker, boy. They're just churning it and
Well,
burning it.
that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's all about the money. It's greed and money. These attorneys, it's all they care about. How much money can I make off of this family before
Mhm,
I have to make them settle?
mhm.
No, this is about the family. If you can't have compassion and empathy and you're adversarial, get the fuck out of my family. Excuse my language.
Oh, that's okay. You're allowed.
Get off of the out of the family courts because you don't belong there because you're have an antisocial personality. You have an anti-family personality.
Mhm, mhm. Well, I got a little story because it was like a week and a half before Christmas, and I get a letter from my lawyer saying, "We really like working with you, but you owe us $8,000, and we need to have this money by the end of the year, at least by the 22nd.
Right.
And Happy New Year, or Merry Christmas. I'm sorry, Merry Christmas, and have a happy holiday." And I thought, "What the hell?" So I signed out another charge card and just went in the office and swiped it. I mean, that is legal abuse.
It is. It's legal abuse. And they could have easily said to you, listen, if you're having a hard time paying, let's make a payment plan up. Can we make a payment plan up?
Right, right. And that's I think, if I
And
hadn't
ask them, are you going after the other side for legal fees? Because if you're going to go after them for legal fees, well, then let's hold off on this because then you can go after them and get the money from them
yes, yeah,
instead of
no.
making me pay out of pocket and causing me more trauma that I'm already dealing with.
Well, see, this is why I so wish I had an ADA advocate when I was going through this because, I don't know if these ADA advocates watch things super close because I know a lot of you have different clients, but in a child support de novo hearing,
Mhm.
if your attorney fails to file physician verification forms not on time, which was I think 15 days before,
Mhm.
and she didn't do it. She just didn't, you know
And that's malpractice.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
that's
what got me in my mess. Yeah,
Yep. That happens all the time in these family court cases. They deliberately don't file something so that your case is such a mess that you have no choice but to proceed forward, and they keep charging you more and more money because
I
had they filed the one thing, the case would have been done.
yeah.
And so they know that if they file that, then they're not going to make any more money off of you.
So, you know, uh, as an ADA advocate, would you have been there at that de novo hearing with that client?
Yeah.
And s
If they had asked me to be there, sure.
and if the judge said, "Well, you don't have your physician verification forms filled out on time," what would the ADA
Okay.
advocate
The ADA advocate would say, okay, Your Honor, my client needs a little more time. It seems that her attorney is having a bit of a difficulty in filing paperwork in a timely manner. My client shouldn't be held to that standard. If the courts would give her the ability to be put on in addition to her attorney, she will get you that paperwork immediately. There will be no delays.
Oh, excellent, because, a lot of people don't know this. I didn't know this. I just expected her to do her job. I thought she was,
I'm almost at the point where I think I need to tell all that most clients need to know you need to be pro se on your case in addition to your attorney
right, right.
so that you can do the subpoenas, so you can get the paperwork, because the attorney is going to deliberately forget to do something so that it sabotages the case so they can make more money.
Mhm, mhm.
And that's exactly what my attorney did. And what the judge did, because the judge wouldn't even put me on in addition to my attorney, so that I could have preserved the evidence that my attorney was refusing to subpoena because he wanted more money. And I'm like, there is no more money. You know this. And the judge has ordered that you have to stay on the case. That means you have been basically court ordered on the case. Therefore, whether I pay you or not, you need to do your job.
Mhm, mhm.
And that is huge. That's why I have ADA advocates when I go into court for myself. Because that way I level the playing field, and I can get, because my attorney isn't doing his job, my ADA advocate can speak up for me. And that's what happened the last time we were in court. My attorney, both times, never even said much of more than 2 words, and my ADA advocate, the judge, had listened to my ADA advocate, and my ADA advocate and I did all the talking.
That's really,
because because we made it very clear that my attorney was not doing his job. And here are the things that have gone on. And the judge wouldn't let us. Oh, that was the other one. There was so much against my attorney in the affidavits we filed, the 4 of them, that the judge read it in chambers, but would not let us put it on the record. All that went on the record is that me telling him my attorney hasn't done subpoenas, he hasn't done this, he hasn't done that, blah, he doesn't communicate, the relationship is irrevocably broken. That should have been enough.
Oh.
Yep, I know. It's incredible.
Yeah. That's why I'm so glad I had you back on, because this is so important that people see this coming. I guess, this podcast serves as a warning that what can happen to you or me can happen to anybody, but at least there's other avenues like an ADA advocate.
Level the playing field.
Yes, yes. And to which I'm grateful, but wish I would have had that when I was going through.
Here's the other thing an ADA advocate does, because I've had to do this also, and this is important for people to realize. It's not just that, but sometimes I have a client who's just so triggered, they're not thinking clearly. Right. And I have to say, Your Honor, my client needs a 5-minute break. When I ask my clients to get ADA accommodations, the things I ask for are for them to be allowed an ADA advocate of their choice, that they get as many breaks as they need, that they're allowed extra time to respond, that they're allowed to have electronic equipment with them so they can look stuff up or take notes as needed, just like the attorneys, and anything else they might need, like extra water at the table or whatever. So I sometimes have to pull my client aside and get a break first, so I can say, look, you're kind of barking up the wrong tree. This isn't where you want to go. Let's stop. One of the biggest things that my pro se clients make, the mistake that they make, is it's the other side's motion, so they get to go first. And they're rambling on, batter-ramming them, slamming them. I tell them, just write the notes down. Now, before you speak, ask the judge for a 5-minute break. Go back out, pull out your opening statement, reread it, go back in, read your opening statement first. Then address the atrocities that the other side is blaming you with. Because otherwise, my pro ses never get their case on the record. All they end up doing is defending themselves instead of showing what their side of the case is. And this is really important that they do that. They get their side. So a lot of the time, I will take a client and say, all right, hang on. I don't think you're understanding. Your Honor, I need 5 minutes to help my client to calm down. And we go out, and I go to a closed room, and I will sit down with the person. I will talk to them. I'll show them whatever I have to show them and say, this is where you want to go to. This direction here is moot. This over here is moot. What we need to do is focus here where you've got your evidence and you've got something you can say and something we can work with. Or I say, okay, we need a few minutes. You need to backtrack. You need to take a break. I need you to refocus on what is the important points that we need to get, whatever the situation. So sometimes as an ADA advocate, it's just getting you those 5 minutes to take a breather, to think, to be able to then know, to be able to present what you want to say. You know how people say, I wish I could think faster on my feet kind of thing, for a good comeback? It's the same thing. These are people that don't think fast enough to give a quick comeback. They need time to collect everything that's been batter-rammed at them.
Right.
They can also ask for things to be reread back to them that have been stated in the courts. They can ask for a written copy of it so they can read it and say, look, I need it read so I can read it. They can ask for free transcripts. Because it's sometimes when you have PTSD and you're in the midst of this traumatic situation in court, this legal abuse, you can't, you completely can't follow what's going on. You need time to read it so that you can understand what they're saying. Because I can't tell you how many times court orders have come down for my clients and they've actually been phenomenal orders, but the client is so triggered they can't see why it's a good order. And I have to explain, you got this, you got this, you got this. So I'll use this one as an example. I have a client who her ex keeps filing shit, and so the order, what happened was the judge says to them, you know, we've got to deal with this. The mother didn't want the child to do driver's ed because the child is having hallucinations. Okay. And so that was a concern about the child being behind a steering wheel. But she had no proof that the kid still had hallucinations because dad stopped taking the kid to the therapist. But there was previous notes of this. Then there was an issue with the pediatrician, with was it the pediatrician? No, with hang on, there was another thing. She had the pediatrician, she had the driver's ed. There was one other item. So what the judge, and then pediatrician, he was trying to switch the kid from her pediatrician she was at to another one because his stepchildren went to that one. Only that pediatrician wouldn't talk to my client. So the judge made an order that said mom is to agree to the driver's ed. Mom is to dad is to dad wanted sole custody. Dad is no sole custody to dad. This is the third time the judge has said no sole custody to dad. Mom is to sign off on the driver's ed, and the pediatrician, dad is to provide mom with the information. Mom is to make a phone call and to try and to go and to talk with the pediatrician, and barring any issues, mom is to agree to the pediatrician that father wants. Well, mom can't. So I looked at the client. I said, this is a test. I'm telling you right now, if the judge was going to give him sole custody, he would have done it already. This is the third time he's refused sole custody. So he gave you a win. That's a huge win. She didn't see that as a win. Then, because all she saw was that she had to sign off on the driver's ed. I said, the judge didn't have a choice because you never provided any medical evidence to support your theory that the child would not be safe to drive. And they said the third one is to see who and what's going to happen. The judge wants to see whether your ex is going to provide you with the information and make sure that the office talks to you. So, and he wants to see if you're going to follow through. So mom calls the office won't talk to her, tells her she's got to talk to the father. Father isn't giving her the information. They've made an appointment to see the child. Turns out this is the second time the child's been in there to see this office without the mother's permission. And the mother, he doesn't have the mother's information on the emergency contact. They have nothing for her. Right. So she's like, no. And when she finally submitted the court orders to the office, they were refusing to look at it until her attorney told them to look at it. Now the office is realizing the father's lied to them the whole time. Mom's like, I'm not giving you permission to see my child. They saw the child despite her saying no, because they wouldn't talk to her, because they kept believing the father. So there's where the judge is looking to see, well, dad didn't do his job. Dad filed false stuff. Dad's still blocking it. And the pediatrician isn't talking to mother. Why would the mother allow this? So it was actually a very good order. It was because it was an appropriate order. And a lot of times PTSD is so bad that we can't see it. And that's a good example. She didn't realize that she actually won big time because the judge didn't give him sole custody for the third time.
Very good point. I totally thank you for your time and coming on and explaining all of this.
You're welcome.
Yeah. It's a good learning experience for everybody and for everyone to know that there are ADA advocates that are out there. But hey,
we're actually trying to build a network of them. So anybody who's out there that would like to become an ADA advocate can reach out to us, and I will help you. And then we'll add, once you've got some certifications behind you, we'll add you to our ADA advocate list for your state. I mean, you don't have to do it in only your state. You can do it in other states because there's no laws on it. But at least having that behind you is good.
how can people reach you?
They can do one of two things. They can do info@advocate4families.com, or they can do info@pas-intervention.org.
Okay, thank you so much. Don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Join us again here with Joan in the future because she's coming back, and other exciting guests. And do not forget to, hashtag Save Bradley. Thank you so much.